This is some real fun right here. Turn signal switch, GM, feeding lots of wires through steering column that definitely don't want to fit through the steering column, especially since it's a tilt wheel. Finally got these all fed all the way down through the column and all the way out. Okay, got new switch wiring all fed down through the column there. I had to take off the lock cylinder and this housing here that holds that in the turn signal switch, all because this little plastic piece right here, which is basically just there to protect these wires from hitting against metal. But with that in place, there's no way that the connector on the end of these wires can actually come out. So I took this housing off here. This little part dropped onto the floor, and I figured out that what it is the high beam switch. When you pull and push on this lever here, it pushes against this thing and actually pushes on a rod that goes through the column and hits the high beam switch. And it's kind of a pain to get this back in the way it's supposed to go, but this little plastic piece basically sits in like so, and then when you put this on, in theory, get everything lined up right. This is how this little cam right here goes. Then when you pull on this lever, pushes that through and connects to a rod which is behind this cover. Then this little trim piece goes over like so. And if you're lucky, it all snaps together. There we go. Look at that. Now we'll get some bolts in this thing. Alright, got those 3 torque screws back in, and this is how the high beam switch should look. It's functioning properly. That is the rod I was telling you about that goes up through the column and gets hit right there by that little cam. It's kind of a funky design, but it kind of matches the ignition switches. That is also ran by a rod that goes all the way through the column on the other side. So now ready for the ignition switch to go in. The trick to this is make sure that the cylinder is rotated all the way towards the start position, and that this little plastic piece right here is all the way in. And then this part here faces down. Stick it in there, and if you look right in there, you can see, if you rotate that, where that thing is actually going to line up at, and when you get it right, it goes right in. And you can actually turn this thing off. And then there's a little pin, the Torx head goes right in there, and you may have to rotate this lock cylinder around a little bit to get it in, and that's what keeps the lock cylinder in place. Okay, next thing to go in is this little plastic piece right here. It just slips into this hole, and that is the electrical connector that tells the vehicle whether or not the key is in And these little contacts here come up and connect with the back side of the turn signal switch that connects to the rest of the vehicle's wiring. Fun stuff. Alright, now we can go ahead and sit the new switch in there. There's held in by 3 screws, 2 of which you can see here, and third one you can't, because you have to actually actuate the switch, move it out of the way to see the third one there. Okay, new switch is in. We still have a limp lever though. That is because this piece needs to be installed, and it goes right in here. There's a little groove that this little end piece slips into in the turn signal switch lever itself, and then this top part fits right into this little spot right here. And you got one Phillips screw that's going to go in here and secure that. And now we got the screw in, and move the lever. You can see it now actuates the switch. The other end of the steering column, where we got our new switch harness coming through. There's this piece here. This is a wiring protector. It keeps the wiring from getting chafed up and the insulation come off of it from just moving around inside the steering column. So it's quite important that this gets put back in. Basically the harness just gets ran through this part, and this here gets slid up inside of the column and locked in. Out of it. I'm just gonna slide it up, and it actually locks in on these tabs here that are the bosses, the mounts for the bracket that holds this thing on. Alright, here's what it looks like under here. The connector plugged in and bracket all back into place. Hazard switch button just screws on. Not a whole lot to it. Alright, on to the next phase of assembly here. Spring goes on. Then we got this little guy here. What this is for your horn. This is actually the connector here for the horn wire. It's on a spring, and it rides on this round piece right here, which is connected to this little brass connector right here, which goes up to the wire to your horn button. So that goes on next. Then the lock plate, this is what keeps your steering wheel locked when the key is in the off position. There is a wide spline right here on the top, so it only fits one way. Make sure to get it lined up. Okay, we got the compressor on here. Make sure to put this little C-clip on here first, otherwise it's really difficult to slide it in and all the way down over the compressor. And then just go ahead and run this thing in, pressing that spring. You can do this without the compressor, but it is quite difficult. They're pretty cheap to pick up. Definitely worth getting one. Or you can even rent them at the auto parts stores. Alright, now you can see the groove there that C-clip needs to go to, fit into. And we can just take a screwdriver or a pick and slide these things down. And I'm going to need 2 hands. This is kind of hard to get. There it goes. And then you go ahead and back this off. Okay, it's now ready for the steering wheel to go on. To get these steering wheels off, you have to have a puller. It is kind of a tapered fit, so they are pretty tight. There's 2 bolt holes right here and here, run into the steering wheel housing, and then this piece right here runs through, and it'll push right in the center of the shaft right here and pull the thing off for you. Alright, steering wheel goes on next. Make sure that you line up the little marks with the steering wheel to the column there. If it's not marked when you take it off, be sure and mark it so that your steering wheel is staying straight. And this here is the horn lead I was talking about earlier. This little hole right there is that little plastic piece, a little connector that will connect to your horn button. What you do is this little tab right here goes in and basically stick it in straight and then twist, and it'll lock right in. So I'll just stick that in there and turn to the right. Doesn't take much, and it's now locked in. Horn button on this one goes on really easy. Wire just plugs in, and then button just snaps in.